do. We do it on the business intelligence side, and we do it on the performance management side. And we do it for a couple of industries, one of which is the hospitality industry. We've been around for quite some time. We're growing. We're successful. And we teamed up with IBM as our partner for some of the technology implementations. So we use the IBM Cognos and IBM Cognos TM1 solutions from IBM to actually build out our hospitality framework and solution. As I said, we do a lot of work with the hospitality companies, and they have a lot of challenges. Today, we're going to talk about the budgeting and forecasting challenges in the hospitality industry. But as you know, there's several other challenges as well. We have webinars on each of these that are upcoming that you can certainly participate in if you'd like, about how to drive operations a little bit more effectively, how to drive occupancy, how to create some mundane but necessary reports in the financial reporting aspect. And we're pretty excited about the predictive analytics and using pricing optimization for that. So by all means, take a look at our website and look at our upcoming webinars if you're interested in some of those. I want to back up and make sure we're all in the same process. So I took one of our customers, one of our clients from a bit ago, and this is a real life example for this client. This client has 200 plus hotels. They did their budgeting planning by the process of creating a spreadsheet at corporate and mailing it out to each of the hotel managers. And the hotel manager would complete that budget and talk with his or her area manager. They go back and forth until they got it right. The area manager would then take those emailed spreadsheets and send them up to corporate, actually FTP them in this case, because they were so big and so bulky and so many. And then the analyst would take those spreadsheets, all 200 plus of them, pull them down to his machine, and then integrate them all and consolidate them all, and then review them with management. And if there was any issue or problem, well, they start the process again. So clearly a pretty ugly, laborious, manual, intensive process. So these guys, when they approached us, said, okay, we'd like to move from a monthly process to a daily process. And so we'd want daily forecasts and be able to do that. We want automatic consolidations. We want multiple roll-ups. There's roll-ups for the owners. There's roll-ups for the financial community, etc. We have a hugely distributed environment, and we have people with different skill sets. We'd like to actually make sure that they could extend a corporate report, and adjust it as they need to for their specific needs without going back to the IT group to have them process that request, that report or dashboard request. So let me talk for a second about what LPA brings to the table in the hospitality solution. We call it a framework as opposed to a product. And what we do, you can see the picture on the bottom left there. The picture is a very simplistic picture, and the concept here is that we go and source all of the data. If you have major national brands like Marriott and Hilton, we'll go grab that data, integrate it into a database layer, into a data warehouse, into a single repository. If you have independents, we'll grab that data as well, and that data may be on a spreadsheet, it may be in some local system. But the idea is we'll pull all that together into a single place. We will then be able to put the logic and workflow on top of that for forecasting, budgeting, and planning, for developing financials, for writing dashboards, etc., for doing what-if scenarios. Because it's in one place, you have a single version of truth. Because it's in one place and one technology, this technology being IBM's Cognos technology, it's scalable, and it's a very integrated solution, and we come with this pre-built set of approaches to handle the types of problems that exist in the hospitality industry. So I'm going to switch it now and switch it over to Brendan Ostman, who will give the demo today. And we'll come back at the end and talk for a second about any questions you have. And so Brendan, you want to pop up the demo?
Logging into the TM1 contributor application as the general manager of a hotel. we're asking the general manager to log into the system and update his forecast for the month of March and key in any data that he knows of that will impact his forecast for the rest of the year if he's got that ability. Now, TM1's got several interfaces to it. This is the first one that's called TM1 Contributor, and it's basically a web-based forecasting budgeting system that's got a workflow that you can attach to it. There's also the TM1 Web product, which looks very similar to this, where you're displaying sheets that are authored in Excel over the web page. And then you've also got the TM1 Excel add-in that we'll see here in a minute, where you can actually create Excel-based reports that are linked back to the cube that you can also use for data entry as well. But we're going to start out in Contributor, and we're going to log in as the hotel general manager. So I'm going to click on Login. And this is all security-based. So when the GM logs in, I can see that right now all the GM can update is the forecast. If we were in the middle of the budgeting season, you would also see a link to the budget. But when I do open the forecast, you'll notice that I only see one hotel because my login, if linked to that one hotel and that one hotel only, we'll log in here in a little while as the administrator, and you'll be able to see the entire organization and where they are in the forecasting process. From here, I can quickly see that the Gaston, New York City forecast is in the status of reserved. That means that I've actually opened the forecast, I've taken ownership of it, and I've actually started keying in some data. You can see here that the last data committed, or the last time I saved the data from my forecast up to the server was on February 26th. And over to the right, I can add comments or review comments that somebody puts on my status of my hotel's forecast. For instance, if I'm in the middle of my forecast and I'm waiting to submit it until I get a estimate from a vendor, I may want to go in and put in a comment on my forecast so that when my manager sees that I have not submitted my forecast yet, he knows why. I can also put an attachment on that comment if I need to. I'm over on the right-hand side, and if I double-click on that, it will actually open up the attachment. So to actually open up my forecast itself, I'm going to click on the link up here, and we'll actually open up another window. And as this is opening, please keep in mind that all of these tabs are completely customizable. Any one of these can be reformatted the way your business wants to see the data. The columns and rows can be totally switched out. You can add additional columns, rows, completely change the format of it. What we're showing you today is the feature functionality of the hospitality solution and the background that we've derived from many of the clients that we work with. So here, the first tab in our forecast is called Daily Revenue. And that's our day-by-day revenue forecast for our hotel. This model, the way we built it, all of the historical months, as they close, as the accounting closes the books, they change from forecast to actual. So the model believes that we are in February of 2014 at this point. So January and February have actualized. And if I wanted to see what I actually sold for transient group room, I can actually expand these months out, and it would actually show me the day-by-day actuals for each room type. But what we're asking the GMs to do is to update their forecast for March forward, so we know how we're going to do for the rest of the year. And you notice some of these columns have a gray background. The gray background indicates that it's a calculated column and that it's not updatable by the general manager. And this first column shows me the transient rooms for last year for that same equivalent date. So the system goes back to 2013 and gets the equivalent date for March 1st and pulls that across and tells me that last year I sold 78 transient rooms on this day. The next column over is the transient rooms that I'm forecasting for this period. Now, in this case, we've preloaded the forecast with a budget number. Some clients decide they don't want to do that. They want to start from a zero-based forecast, and you can definitely do that if you want to. At this point, you'd come in and you'd update the numbers. So if I want to update the 56 to 62 and the 67 on the second to 71, I can hit enter. When I hit enter, you'll notice a bunch of the numbers turn blue on the screen. That indicates that I've impacted that calculation or that result based upon entry that I've done. So if I scroll over to the right, the system's automatically recalculated my total rooms sold for the day, and it's also recalculated my occupancy percentage, not only for today, but for the whole rest of the month. It's allocated that all the way down. We do the same thing for group rooms. I'm going to adjust my group rooms here just a little bit. And then I'm going to come over to my rates, which I've got on the right-hand side. And so I've got my transient rates and then my group rates as compared to last year. And then over on the right-hand side, it blends that together to come up with a total ADR for the day that's blended between group and transient, my total room revenue for the day versus last year's total room revenue for the day. Okay. The system automatically consolidates everything and rolls it all up. So here I can see that if I submitted my room revenue forecast as of right now, I'd be at a $241,000 room revenue for the month. Last year I was at $295,000, and my blended ADR for the month is $94.46. The total occupancy percent for the month is 65.4. Okay. Now, if I wanted to fill out the room forecast on a daily basis for the rest of the month in the year, I could expand these out and do it day by day, or I could actually jump over to the monthly revenue tab and do it at a higher level. So for instance, if I want to go in and just update my room revenue forecast, I can come in and just type in an occupancy percentage and a blended rate, and the system will calculate a forecast for me for the rest of the year. In this instance, I've preloaded my forecast for April with what I had budgeted at the end of last year at a 72% OCC and a $99 blended ADR. If I want to adjust either one of those, again, it's got a white background, I can actually update it. I'm going to actually update my ADR here to 102. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to recalculate my forecast for April. It's going to re-roll it up. And on this page, I can see the whole year forecast. Compare that to budget. Automatically, we'll compare it to last year. And then it does a variance to budget and a variance to last year. So I can quickly see how my revenue is trending over the year, how I'm doing according to budget and according to last year as well. Now, jumping over to the expense side, the way we've designed this template is we've done different tabs for different departments. So for this example, I'm going to show you the rooms department tab. So I'm just click on rooms department. The rooms department tab is fed by the revenue that was keyed in on the daily revenue or the monthly revenue tab. And all of the accounts that are in the rooms department are driven off of certain rates. And in this model, the way we built it, and you don't have to build it this way, each account has got to the right-hand side what its driver is. So for instance, if I come down to guest breakfast, I can see that my guest breakfast account for the rooms department is driven off of a $1 per occupied room rate. Okay, that $1 per occupied room rate that it's using is $2.14. You'll notice that it's got a white background. That means I've got security access and the right privileges to actually update that rate. The 10,131 has got a bit gray background. It's calculated. So it's taken the $2.14 rate times my updated rooms sold for the month of March, and it's recalculated automatically my guest breakfast account, as well as any of these other accounts that are in blue have been recalculated based upon my changes that I made in my revenue. Okay? I also can change the rate as well if I need to, and put in any comments. Maybe why I needed to change the rate. I can do that as well. So here I can see from my guest breakfast account, I was running a budget for that account of $2.18. Last year I was at $2.26, but for February I came in at $2.15. Okay, so maybe I want to change that to $2.15. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to recalculate that, recalculate it to $10,178. And I can actually come in here and add a comment if I want to and say why I changed it. So I'm going to say changed according to February actuals. Okay. Now you notice it'll put a red hashtag on that cell. Anybody looking at my forecast for my hotel or a region or a roll-up that my forecast rolls up to, we'll see that hashtag on the guest breakfast account, and they can drill into what those comments are for any hotel that put in a comment into that intersection. Okay. Now I'm going to jump over to the monthly forecast tab. So, we're assuming that you're going to go in here and update all your expenses. When you come to the monthly forecast, this rolls up everything together. And again, everything is highlighted in blue that you've impacted based upon your changes. And you can drill all the way down, and I can see that if I submitted my forecast right this second, I'm forecasting a net income for my hotel of $80,359. I'd actually budgeted a loss of almost $44,000, and last year's March activity was positive $146,000. Okay, but let's say I potentially have a big group that's going to come in and occupy a big portion of my hotel in March. And I want to see how that may impact my numbers, what that would possibly bring my number up to for the month of March. But I'm not sure that that's going to happen yet, so I don't want to necessarily include that in my forecast right now, but I want to just go in there and see how that would impact it. Well, I can use what's called a sandbox within TM1. And what a sandbox does, it allows you to create an alternate scenario. And that scenario is only seen by you. It basically gives you your own area that you can play around with the data and manipulate it, and then compare that change data to the data that's actually in your forecast. And you can do as many scenarios as you need to and want to. So to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is save my data that I've keyed in so far to my existing forecast. I'm going to just go up here, click the green check mark. You'll notice everything went back to a white background, and the numbers went to black. That means they're permanently saved in my forecast. Then I'm going to come up here to my sandbox icon, and I'm going to create a sandbox. And I'm going to say adjust group March revenue. Okay? I'm going to hit OK. And you'll notice when it comes back, and that tells me that I'm within my adjust group March revenue data set or sandbox. It's copied automatically behind the scenes all of that data from my forecast into that sandbox, and I can now manipulate it on any of these tabs and have it only impact that sandbox value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my daily revenue, and I'm going to come in here and I'm going to say for the month of March, for my group rooms, I'm going to scroll over here to the left, and I'm going to adjust my group rooms sold, and I'm going to actually just increase that by 20%. And I'm going to use what's called a data spread to do that. What a data spreading allows you to do quickly do data entry across a hierarchy, and the system will automatically update that data so that you don't have to go in there day by day and change those numbers. Okay? So I'm going to go in here and do a data spread, and I'm going to say that I'm going to do a percent change, and I'm going to increase this by 20%. And I'm going to add 20% each day, and I'm going to click apply. Now you notice what it did is it updated each day. It multiplied it times 120% essentially, rounded it up to the next room, reconsolidated everything, so it impacted my group rooms sold, my total rooms, my total OC. If I scroll over to the right, my total ADR as well as my total room revenue has changed. Okay. Now, if I jump to rooms, you'll notice that a bunch of my expenses have changed as well. My rooms occupied went up, so some of my expenses go up as well. And if I jump to monthly forecast now, I can actually drill down and see what my new net income is based upon that new revenue. So if I wanted to compare that to what I had in my original forecast, I can come back to default, and I can see that increasing group rooms by 20% for the month of March actually only brings up my net income by $2,000. So I can decide which version of that forecast that I want to actually submit to my manager and go ahead and submit it. To submit the forecast, all that I do is I always hit save again, and then you just click on the submit button up at the top, and yes, we do want to submit. You'll notice once I do submit, all of the cells background goes gray, which means they are currently locked. So that hotel GM cannot make any more changes to the forecast until either his manager rejects the forecast and sends it back to him, or the forecasting process starts over again the next forecasting cycle. Same thing with budget. So you'll notice now it says up at the top that it's locked, and then we're looking at the gas and hotel. So now I'm going to come out and I'm going to log off and log in as the administrator, and we're going to actually see the entire organization hierarchy and workflow status for the forecast. So here I'm going to go into the forecast again, and now I can see the entire company. Okay, and the entire company rolls up to regions. And if I expand out these regions, I can quickly see which regions are in compliance with my deadlines here. If we're on the last day of our forecasting cycle, I can see very quickly the North region is all completed. They're approved. They're ready to go. They've got a green light. West region has got an orange status. That means that part of their hotels are complete. Part of them are in process. The ones with the red square means that no one has actually even opened that template yet. So the process typically is where templates are automatically updated with actuals as they are posted in the system. So you would expect people throughout the forecasting process to look at that forecast template periodically and actually start keying in their accurate forecast. If you're on the last day of the forecasting process and nobody's even opened the template yet, they will probably raise a question as to how accurate that forecast is actually going to be if they actually submit it on time. And we can also see that, based upon the entire region's status, it rolls up to a status for the region as well. So the East region, actually none of those hotels have started at all. So the entire region is in red. Now, I can also, as an administrator or a person with view of roll-ups in the system, let's say I want to see what the North region's forecast is. I'm the North region manager, and I want to see out of my hotels how much net income I think I'm going to get for March. Okay, I can see that same set of templates in the same format by simply clicking on the North region, and I'm going to jump over to the monthly forecast tab. And what the system's doing is it's adding all those hotels together into the correct format here. And if I scroll down to the bottom, I can actually see that in total for my region, I'm actually going to lose $201,128, but I had budgeted almost a $700,000 loss for my region. If I wanted to, I can start drilling into those properties right from here, and I can start picking individual properties if I wanted to look at those details. Or I could obviously go off to my ad hoc reporting tools as well and go start slicing and dicing some of this data behind the scenes if I wanted to. Okay. So that's it for the web-based forecasting and budgeting tool that we've created. Now I'm going to jump over to the TM1 add-in for Excel. Okay. The TM1 add-in for Excel is called Perspective, and it is simply this menu in Excel that gets added. And we're going to bring up an example of another type of template that some of our other clients have used. They've decided that they wanted to actually use Excel as their front end for their templates. And so they've actually created this template. First thing that you do is you come in and you pick your property for the hotel, hit recalculate, and the system automatically interacts with Excel and goes and pulls data from the cubes, presents it in Excel, and then it becomes read-write. Okay? You'll notice these formulas up at the top are DBRWs. That means they are interactive with the TM1 cubes behind the scenes. So as I update this data, it will actually write that data back to the cube and update my forecast. So here's a little bit more complex full service forecasting template by different segments. So we've got group, current last year, total reservations, transient contract, guaranteed no sales, and comp rooms. We also have the ability in TM1 to store comments. Okay, so in this template, we're actually asking them to put in comments on why their forecast is what it is. If there's anything that impacts their forecast based on this year's data versus last year, or anything that management needs to know about their hotel's forecast. Here's a room revenue report. So just kind of consolidated by period based on the different segments within the hotel, actual to budget to forecast as well. Here's an example of some food and beverage forecasting where you can do your forecast based upon number of covers and average rate, average check. It will calculate the revenue. The average covers, you can actually have that even driven off of rooms sold. So take a room sold times a percentage to come up with the covers. That will automatically feed into your revenue for food and beverage, and then will also impact your expenses for food and beverage departments as well. Here's an example of a report so from TM1. So we could do financial reports, workbook, etc. that would automatically be updated by the data after you close the book. So here's an actual forecast detail by month for 2014 for one particular hotel. Again, this is authored in Excel. It can either be consumed on the TM1 website or in Excel itself. Here's just a summary report where we've got the rooms stats up at the top, total room revenue, revenue by each department, total GOP, and then a flow through. It's calculated within TM1. You also have the ability to change up this data as well. So we've run this report as the Gaston, New York City. If I wanted to change the hotel that I'm bringing back, I simply double click on that cell. I can pick any other location that I've got security rights to see, recalculate the sheet, and it automatically brought in that new hotel's information. I could also change the year as well. If I wanted to go back to 2013 for the LPA Lodge, Staten Island, making it shift F9, and the data will recalc and bring in the most current data. Okay. So I can easily just change any of this data by simply double-clicking, recalculating, and you'll notice my numbers change as I navigate through my hierarchy here. So anybody can pull up this data, simply change their hotel, recalculate, and basically you can create one template that the entire organization can use by just creating this drop-down list up at the top. Okay. Here's another example of just a basic report that we built. Wanted to show you here that the data, it's linked back to the cube behind the scenes. We're bringing it across. But here we created just a simple Excel chart graph in here. As the data changes from TM1, it actually updates the graph. If I go back here and change this to 2013 and recalculate my data or bring up a particular hotel, you notice it's changing the data as well as the chart automatically. So you have the ability to go in and format these reports basically any way you want to and interact with that data through Excel and then display this report on the web product if you so choose. Okay. Real quickly, I want to show you the capabilities of the Cube Viewer. So I'm going to jump over to the Cube Viewer. Again, this is still the add-in to Excel. This just gives me the viewer in the cube where I'm actually looking at the dimensions and the hierarchy and the data itself within the system. Here, I'm assuming that my forecast for the month of March has been submitted already. Corporate's reviewing it now. We're going through a management review of my March forecast. I'm looking at total year, and corporate is questioning the repair and maintenance account for what has been submitted for the month of March. Now, let's say that there's a big project that we need to undertake at the end of March. It's a big expense. We want to allocate that expense to all the hotels that have budgeted something for repairs and maintenance for the month of March. We want to allocate that based upon their percentage to the total. Now, we could easily open up the forecast again and tell all the hotels to go back in there and adjust their numbers, bring them up, tell them what amount they need to bring. Or we could just simply adjust it from the top down and push that change down. So that's what I'm going to do here. So I can see here that total company, I'm looking at $6,583 expense for the month of March. Let's say we need to add another $100,000 to that. Simply, all that I have to do is right-click and do another data spread, just like what we did in the other tool. And here I'm going to do a relative proportional spread. And I'm going to pick relative proportional spread for $100,000. And I'm going to add $100,000 to the total. I'm going to click apply. You'll notice that the system automatically added the $100,000 and spread it, each one of the hotels, reconsolidated it, so I'm at a total $106,000 for the month for all of LPA lodging. If any of those hotels open up their forecast now, which of course they're still locked for the GMs, but if the GM opened up his forecast, that expense line would have changed. The net income and anything else that is impacted by that change that was keyed in up at the top. So again, we're just making those changes and pushing those down to the hotels. Again, it's based off security. So you need to have security access to be able to update those numbers at the consolidated level and push that down. Now, one thing that TM1 is doing behind the scenes is it's tracking every single change that anybody's doing to the system. It's tracking the before value, the after value, and it allows the user to go in there, or an administrator, to go in and see all the transactions that either a particular user keyed in, or anything that's impacted a hotel, or anything that's keyed in for a day, and select certain transactions and back them out if they need to be. So if you've got a user that has gone into their forecast and they've messed something up, they can call you up and say, can you back this out? The question is, yes, I can go into the transaction log, When I launch the transaction log, you can see up here that I've got a query screen that I can limit my query to transaction log to either a particular date, client, if I know who the client is, or maybe even a cube. I'm going to open up just for the cube for daily revenue, because I know that I've keyed in some data in the last day or so on daily revenue cube. I'm going to hit OK. And what the system does is it goes through and it looks at all the logs that it's tracking, and it brings in on a day-by-day, time-by-time basis, and shows each user that updated any of the data. So on this first line, it shows that the user ID hotel admin came in and changed the forecast for this hotel for 2014 transient rooms on February 1st, changed it from 30 rooms sold to 56. And if I scroll over to the right, I can see all the other intersections that impacted. Now, let's say I wanted to back that transaction out. All that I need to do is edit. I can select either one or multiple lines on here. It'll put a check mark off to the left, and I need to go edit back out. And what the system just did is it created a reversing entry for me at the bottom. So I can see this originally went from 30 to 56. If I scroll down to the bottom now, I should see it going from 56 back to 30. Scroll all the way to the bottom. So refreshing my query, I can actually see that my data originally was keyed in as 0, 56, then we changed it from 56 to 62. Reversing this first transaction took it back from 62 back down to 0. So it's smart enough to know that there was an intermediary transaction in there. It reversed that one as well. So we got it back down to 0 at this point. And that is logged as the administrator in this case. It shows that I actually went in there and logged or backed out that transaction, and that's what's now in my forecast. What I also wanted to do real quick is to show you an example of how easy it is to create a report in the system. So if I'm going to come back to my key viewer real quick, let's say I wanted to create this report and bring it down to Excel. I'm creating an Excel report out of it. First thing I'm going to do is go in and filter out some of the data so that it's honed in a little bit better as to what I actually want my report to look like. All that I need to do is go up here and click one of these buttons up at the top, and I can create different types of reports in Excel. I'm going to use what's called an active form, and by simply clicking on that button, it takes that data from the Cube Viewer, puts it into Excel, and it created those DBRW formulas, or those links back to the data behind the scenes. Now, once it's in Excel, I can manipulate it, add rows, add columns, adjust that format any way I want to, but it's giving me a starting point for my report, and it was very quick and easy to do. Again, if I needed to change up the selections that I've got, I can double-click and rerun this report for a different hotel, a different time period. Just by simply recalculating it, it regenerates those DBRW formulas that pull back from the cube and displays it in Excel. Also with an active form, I have the ability to drill down. So for instance, if I wanted to come down to my room revenue account, and I can see that this is a total, $280,786 for the month of March, but I wanted to see my segmentation under that, I can actually double click on that cell, and it will actually start drilling down on those account roll-ups. And so I can see the individual accounts that roll up to those line items. And that's dynamic. So as new accounts get added into your structure, next month, if you opened up this template and you double-clicked on it, it would actually show those new accounts in the structure as well. At this point, I'm going to switch it over to show you guys the Cognos BI dashboarding tool. And
thanks, Brendan. Over the next few minutes, I'd like to show you the power of BI combined with LPA's hospitality framework. When companies use LPA's hospitality framework, they gain real insights into their business that help make accurate decisions. Because the TM1 data source is actually live, budgets can be compared with actuals in real time. What we're going to show you next is dashboards that have been set up based on our hospitality framework. And we have two cases, one for the executives, or in our example, regional vice president, and the other for a general manager. So I'm going to go ahead and open one that's been set up for executives, or in this case, the regional vice president of the hotel. The dashboard actually has been set up using the TM1 cube as a data source. And so we're leveraging all the existing hierarchies that the TM1 cubes use. In this particular example, you can see time has been set up as one of the dimensions, and so has regions. You can see there's north, south, east, and west. And the way this has been set up is if I were to click in and want to see how hotels for a particular region were doing, I would simply click into, for example, the West region, and then my numbers for the hotels that represent the West would actually come up and render on the dashboard. Okay. Now, if you give the dashboard a quick gloss over, you'll find we're looking at gross operating profit, occupancy percentage, some average daily rates across the quarter, right? And I can actually then drill into and go down into the quarter if I wanted to, just to see how we were doing in that particular, during that particular time. And just as I can go down or traverse the hierarchy, I can also drill back up. Okay, and what we're doing here is just combining the LPA hospitality framework and the inbuilt functionality of IBM Cognos. Okay, sometimes they get really messy. A lot of companies that we do business with have a large number of properties, and in this case, it started off with 4 regions that were clear to read, and now it's sort of fairly, extremely busy. So I have 2 choices here. A, I could, if I wanted to just maximize this, okay, and as I did that, Cognos automatically created a life-size picture for me, and now this is a lot easier to read and do analysis on. The other thing I could do is I could say, hey, I'm not a visual person, I really like my numbers, and so what I'm going to do is just switch this over to a table. And as soon as I do that, you'll find I'll get my hotels back with percentages. So if I restore this back down, this might be my view of how I want to see this widget. So all widgets really become then customizable, and you can play with them in terms of in terms of setting the sort orders, in terms of picking your own palette, and adding calculations if you wanted to add a calculation. We also have filters that have been built in to the dashboards. For example, if I wanted to go back and look at a different year, I could move the slider bar over, and then all the widgets that are tied to that filter would then automatically rerun and bring the data back as of the year that I selected. In addition to the summary metrics that most companies look at, what's also important is giving executives, top-down analysis or top-bottom analysis, as some people like to call them. In this particular case, my top 5 properties start with the Grafton, New York City, and the occupancy percentage there is at 79.8. If I were to click that link, what's going to happen is it's going to launch and run the details for the Grafton hotel and come back with some numbers for the Gaftons. In this particular instance, I'm looking at the hotel occupancy for my particular hotel versus star data or the competitive occupancy percentages, and I can tell I'm doing slightly better than the comp occupancy. Okay. Interestingly enough, though, that is because if you look over at the average daily rate, my hotel's average daily rate is actually lower. So it's numbers that executives can then play with and try and understand if they can tweak things to either have higher occupancy and less room revenue, or more room revenue, but lesser occupancy. Okay. Right. The name of the game really is also to keep things dynamic. And so, for example, here, yes, Gaston was really doing well, but I could always click into the prompt that I have and pick a different hotel and run numbers for that hotel. So the name of the game with the LPA hospitality framework is to keep things dynamic and to keep data at the executive's fingertips. Okay. A lot of executives also look at operational reporting, which is, daily give me a snapshot of how my business is doing. And that is achieved very easily by building what we call a briefing book. So I'm going to click on the RVP daily briefing book. It basically runs every day and gets saved as a snapshot. So when you click it, all it does is pop up and show you the data rather than run real time. So in this case, I've got a cover page, a table of contents, and if I traverse down, I've got different sections showing actual summaries, and then I've got the sections broken up by different departments. You can also section these by different cover pages just to let, just to have it more customized, as well as make it more meaningful. Okay, these table of contents, I promise you do work. By clicking on the beverage section, it's going to take me straight to the beverage and telecommunications department folder. Okay, so I'm going to X out of that. And last but not the least on this dashboard, I'm going to show you how to bring in a new metric that we typically set up, because there's several different metrics to choose from, and it's just impossible to put all of them on the dashboard. But on the off chance that you want to see a certain widget that you're really wanting to bring in that isn't there, you can always bring it in. So after I traverse to my folders and find the report that I'm looking for, it's very easy then to bring it in. I simply drag it onto my whiteboard, minimize that, and my report's now going to run and come back with the numbers for that particular report. So in this case, I'm looking at just occupancy percentages across my entire line and my average daily rate for the year 2011. What I'd like to show you next is the general manager dashboard. It's set up similar to the regional vice president dashboard, except it is only looking at the numbers for that particular hotel that the GM is actually managing. And then I'm going to click and launch the general manager dashboard. Okay. As you can see from the layout, same style. He or she has the same filtering capability, same briefing book, except this one gets built for that particular hotel. Same metrics, because at its very core, management and GMs have to be in alignment on what metrics matter, so they should both be tracking the same level of metrics. And that's really what LPA's hospitality framework tries to get companies to hone into, to improve their bottom line, to improve their analytical capabilities, and to understand what needs to be either looked at or fixed, and everyone's always on the same page. So here, the only reason for me to show you this dashboard really is to let you know that yes, certain times metrics are different or different accounts need to be reviewed. So in this case, the GM wants to, let's say, look at his labor dollars and how would he or she go about doing that. So I have my total overhead here. I'm simply going to launch this. And after it opens up, I can now look at all my sources that I can pull. So if I look at my forecast, for example, it will actually show me all the accounts that I have access to that I could want to see or do analysis on. Okay, so in this particular case, I'm going to bring over the payroll benefit summary and place it under sales and marketing. Okay, I could bring in some beverage department summary if I wanted to. Okay. And so as you can tell, I can add any one of these accounts to my overall analysis, right? And then furthermore, if I wanted to, I could then say, okay, for example, in this particular case, let's suppress zeros, and so let's do suppress rows only. All right, and after that is done, you can say okay, and it's going to now go down and become my new analysis, if you will. Okay, so these are just a few things out of the many, many, many powerful features that LPA's hospitality framework and the combination of BI in using TM1 as a source bring to you. Okay, back to you, Jesse.
And thank you, Brendan. I'm going to jump back to our presentation here, recap things, and then open the floor for any questions that folks have. So to recap, as Brendan demonstrated, an LPA hospitality framework in conjunction with IBM Cognos is going to enable you to move from monthly or bi-monthly forecasting to nearly real time, instantly, right? And really what enables this is the ability for the system to automatically consolidate and roll up. We're removing those manual steps that you heard Don describe earlier in the presentation, with spreadsheets being emailed around and manually collected. User adoption is easy and effective, especially with these cell integrations. So, in some cases, when we implement our hospitality solution, we're just using the Excel templates that organizations are already familiar with. So it's a very quick and simple rollout. And then as we're removing the need for things like consolidation, FTPing files, the need for some IT resources go down as most of this is handled automatically. The one thing that's not on this list that is often the #1 reason to implement a controlled planning and budgeting solution, such as this, is the trust factor. Right? You're always going to know what the current version of the truth is. You're always going to know who exactly changed what value and when they changed it. And with the collaboration features like commenting, the whys. So that's a recap of our presentation. I'm now going to open the floor to some of the questions that we've received through the chat window. So Brendan, if you could unmute your line, and I'll take us through some of the questions. If anyone else has questions on the line, feel free to use the chat window to post those. So Brendan, the first question is in regards to connecting to a property management system. So the question is in regards to how are actuals actually obtained, and is this something that is automatic? So how do we connect to PMS systems, and is that an automatic feed or is that a manual process?
So the answer is it depends. TM1 comes with a tool called Turbo Integrator, which can connect to either an ODBC data source or a read-in text or CSV files. Now, the caveat to that is that you have to have a connection to the source. If you already have a connection to the source and can just import that data in via ODBC, we can connect directly to it. If you are not able to get that data directly, we have the expertise in-house to do another project on top of that to actually go out and process files that come in via email to a centralized email address. We could then detach those data files and import them into a data warehouse behind the scenes, which then TM1 and Cognos BI would read that data warehouse on a daily basis. So it kind of depends. Actuals, a lot of time we bring in directly from the ERP system. Typically that is in-house, and so we can create an ODBC connection directly to it. and that is imported several times a day usually from actuals. But from TMS systems, it depends. There's so many out there. It just depends on what you've got and what your connectivity is to it.
So I think to summarize that, if you can connect directly, if there's a database we can connect to directly, that's best case, because we can just line it right up and schedule a job to pull that data in at some interval. And then the fallback would be file output from that PMS system if you can't get direct access. Okay, that's good. All right, Brenda, the next question is in regards to security. So, so we've got, and this question came in when we were showing the view where we had the hierarchy of properties and rolling up to managers. So does TM1, will that ensure that only the right people can view the right data, as well as control who can edit what? Can you briefly talk about security?
Sure. So security in TM1 can be as granular as you need it to be. For instance, I can limit a particular person to just see maybe one hotel, and maybe I want them to see all the departments except for food and beverage. And then even within the rooms department, maybe I want them to see all accounts except payroll. So I can define that low.
Lost you there, Brendan. You still there? All right. I can no longer hear Brendan. So I apologize for that connectivity issue, but I think to summarize what Brendan was just wrapping up saying, data level security can be set up so that you can make sure that only users that have access to see their locations data, for example, that's the only data they could see. You can also set it up so that they have access to write certain values to that data, over a certain period of time. So it's ultimate flexibility when it comes to when it comes to data level security. All right, the time is now 1 o'clock. So there's a couple additional follow-up questions here that we did not get to. So for those of you who have outstanding questions, we'll be sure to follow up with you one-on-one on those. We appreciate everyone for joining us today. Please be sure to stay tuned for our next webinar, which is going to be on using some of the predictive modeling capabilities that IBM Business Analytics brings to the table to do some pricing optimization. So be sure to check out opa.com/events for our next webinar. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties at the end there with Brendan. And I thank everyone for joining. I look forward to seeing you in the future webinar. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.